Great teams go to die, and we're here again once more. The reason why I worry is this is perhaps where teams might underestimate the potential that Mkers have, okay? If we look across the map history for Mkers throughout the past couple of months, most of the maps they lose to, Ollie, are more strat-heavy maps, your clubs and your villas. If you look at their cafes, their coastlines, they don't lose them. Navi, back inside of the qualifiers for this competition, where Mkers, of course, did that amazing run, beating 5 EUL teams. Navi played them on Coastline. And I think Coastline for Navi was always a very, very strong map. At the end of the day, that is where they won their first ever Pro League champion from. And they were very, very shocked to see what Mkers could do. And I think SSG might fall in that same trap. You cannot bring a team like Mkers to these maps which rely very, very little on strategies, and it's just sheer gunfight. And as we've seen from Mkers, Ollie, especially Gemini, he can make things happen out of nowhere.
You really can. That's going to conclude the banning phase there. Thatcher, Buck, Valkyrie and Wamai for operators to be removed. The Buck coming in as a bit of an interesting one there, Demo. Potentially a little bit of targeting going on?
Perhaps. I mean, looking at this map, in terms of the usual operators you see banned out, like hard breachers, for example, it doesn't really exist on Coastline. We see plenty of times where teams will just not take a hard breach at all. It's not a necessity for a map like Coastline. And perhaps banning Buckaway, which is very good in terms of the potential bomb sites that you can play with as an attacker. Being able to go above, use the verticality, go below and use the verticality, a lot of destruction inside of Coastline. Then perhaps that could be a great ban for Mkers.
Bombs from being defused by attackers.
Yeah, it really could. I think that's maybe where they're looking to try and go with it. Just, you know, even if it's just an attempt to try and slow Rampy down somewhat. Because don't forget, SSG had a stormer of a game here on Coastline only a couple of days ago. So Mkers have some recent information to be going off here. And I think that those bans could be a little bit more of a target. That's one of the things I like about Coastline, though, is you don't get bogged down in the same predictable usual bans. I know Spacestation have banned the Thatcher here, and that just is what it is, but it frees at least one of those bans up to be something a little bit more creative.
So, first defense for Space Station will be in towards the kitchen. Looking at their setup, an extension in towards Blue Bar and Sunrise, and even in towards the top floor as well. Almost, that's about 70% map control is what SSG are trying to establish. No mirror being brought, which is actually something we see quite a lot for this kind of setup. You'd go above, place a mirror window inside of theater. It then gives you that information and, of course, that peak advantage whenever anyone tries to enter through bedroom. But they're not going to opt for that. Instead, just much more of a loose roam. And I think they're kind of set up, Ollie, that they can just fall back anytime. The hatches are open. Mkers, they may think they have somebody trapped, but as we know, the rotations in Coastline, there's a lot of them.
I think there's been a pretty bad mist drone here. Fultz seems to be happy to stay here inside of Aquarium. There is a drone that's past him 3 times now, Demo. It went all the way through into Billiards, then it came back out again. Now it's gone over into Luggage. Fultz, he finds himself a freebie onto Lolo. Can he grab the second? In a prime position now, he can drop the hatch. As we've said, SSG now looking to just employ this sit-and-wait strategy. Get out there, get on the roam, get yourself a kill, and then get yourself back safe.
Pretty poor from Mkers, giving away the first kill to SSG, and they still have one player lurking as well. Don't forget about the man inside of theater. Let's see if Mkers can get that droned out. And even Canadian was thinking about pushing up the stairs, and they're actually going to go for it again. Akwi, is he ready for it? Just again, look, Mkers not entirely sure where to look, as now he creeps in, and Canadian gets caught just waiting by the staircase. Wasn't aware that someone was waiting for him, and now this is where the fun begins for Mkers, as they have somebody pinched. It will be Thinking Nade, and he has no escape, Ollie. He is playing here to get kills or die.
No hatch inside of theater for Thinking Nade to drop from. Instead, just going to be holding a pretty narrow pixel peek there through the cabinet. Getting the nades tossed in on him now. He's going to have to push up aggressively here to try and get himself a frag, deal some damage in onto Scato, but he's given the game away. Looks like he's going to start getting pinched from both sides. The nade is now cooked. Shots exchanged, but the nade lands true. Scato takes down Thinking Nade, and with it, they gain top floor control.
Great work by Scato being able to have that nade. He took a lot of damage, Ollie, a lot of bullets firing into him, but he's still standing. Now SSG, they had that first pick, but now they've lost it. at the man deficit. 4 versus 3 in favor of Mkers. That destructibility from above will now come into play. This will give Mkers the access to go for a plant now, very successfully being able to cut off the rotations that SSG would like to go for. A lot of them still situated over towards the Sunrise side, and now that's only 2 players left for SSG. Bosco trying to hold them back with the smoke. Sasha has been delayed. He has to wait until that Toxic Babe does clear out before he can go again, but there is still one more Toxic Babe, which will be tossed out, but doesn't matter. Bosco has been eliminated, and Rampy all by himself, a 1 versus 3, he has to go big. Bosco actually gets the smoke kill from beyond the grave. Upstairs is where the cover's going to come in from. Akwi just has to hold the angle and land the kill. Oh no, but he's let him get across. Thankfully, Sasha is there. He had enough time to get off the defuse and get that kill. Oh, almost a disaster for Mkers.
Tough stuff there for Mkers, having to make the best of a bad situation. Bosco's last Toxic Babe canister, they tossed that out, coming in massive for him. And all that going on with the Melusi Banshee still on the table. Now that isn't a piece of utility demo that you want kicking around when you're trying to get a plant down and come off it and flick onto a player like Rampy.
Obviously, that's going to be very difficult for them to get rid of. They used a lot of the nades trying to clear out Finkenade, who did very, very well. Sure, he didn't kill, but still, the time waste and the utility dump he got was amazing. But that first pick onto the Ash as well was why we've seen those pieces of equipment still left for SSG. But Mkers, I mean, still being able to pull out these round wins. I'm getting a little bit of APAC action where we've kind of put down Cyclops and Cloud9 into rounds that they shouldn't win, but all of a sudden they do.
SSG going to mix things up here. Not looking to give it another go downstairs in the kitchen. Instead, they're going to take us upstairs, Billiards and Hooker. Now, something that Mkers need to get a handle of, and need to get a handle of it quickly, is the early droning. We saw it in the last round. 3 missed drones onto 1 player. It's pretty unforgivable stuff. You know, you can't be affording to misdrone somebody, especially when you're dealing with SSG, because they are going to be a team that are going to punish you in the gun skill department.
Mkers, Ollie, of course, having a very hectic day. A lot of matches for them still to come, only having the 1 game. And our last play day for Group B, and that was just against the Giants, of course, which they did lose. But today, Ollie, a big gauntlet that they have to run. Of course, starting off with SSG, and then they move into Oxygen right after this, and then to round off their day, they have MIBR. So Mkers definitely up against it.
They've got a tough day, but it's almost like welcome to the big leagues. You know, this isn't PG Nats anymore. This is the Six Invitational, and you're going to have to be going up against teams of this caliber. So for Mkers, if they want the dream to continue and they really want to show what they're about, they need to have a big day here and prove that, you know, I'm not going to use the word that it was a fluke, but just make sure that it's a repeatable process, that they're able to actually continually pick up these games against big teams and continue to surprise us.
Fultz, very aggressive, looking for anything he can, trying to find that first pick, and it does look as if SSG, they're hungry for the kills. They want to try and delay Mkers as much as they can. If I'm SSG, you're probably looking at Mkers and thinking, okay, a very, very turbo-focused team where they can turn the ignition on Ollie and they're in your faces. If you bring that to them early on and are able to pick off some of the big players, you know, we've highlighted Gemini, we've highlighted Akwi, and you take them out early, Ollie, that's going to be great for your team. And again, look, SSG with that aggression, and Rampy nets a C4 kill.
Rampy finds himself a freebie there over onto Scato. That's 2 nades down. The 4 that were being brought really is something that Mkers relied on in the previous round. Even to the way that they used those nades to root out Thinking Nade upstairs, it was exactly that. You know, making sure that you're able to use those grenades and get them thrown out there. So they're going to have a few less of those to be dealing with, and still plenty of utility to wade on through. Lolo is just threatening at the moment inside of Aqua. Doesn't really want to overcommit because obviously the floor is open, but he knows he's got a job to do in terms of removing utility inside of A.
Lolo trying to push in with that R4C, utilizing that breaching round to pick off pieces of equipment that are still standing for SSG. Canadian finds another now, and that's Gemini gone. And now here comes Mkers, a quick aggressive push. Lolo, he's thinking about it. Oh, but Canadian lines them up, mounts the LMG, and slaughters them all as they swing in. Akwi, he was over by himself on towards that hooker, trying to find any picks he can, but he let Canadian get away from him. And that did cost his team, Akwi. What can you do? There's one kill. 3 more to find, though. Look at the triangle of death being set up by SSG. A good response after a first-round loss for Space Station.
Canadian stepping up there with the Alder, the clutch weapon, the gun that we know to be that bullet hose, able to pick up multiple kills in just a short spray. It all started with a nice opening pick. You know, that first C4 that Rampy was able to get off, it just slowed down the push immediately, and I think that removed a lot of information away from Mkers. If we watch them play, they are a team that regularly run the Iana, and they rely on that for the Geminis for that intel. The nades, of course, very nice. It was a big point that I made at the time, but it really did come to hurt because all of a sudden, Lolo is then the one that's focused about removing some of that utility with Ash's breaching rounds, as opposed to being able to toss grenades in and maybe even remove players or shift players like Canadian from playing inside of Hooker.
Alder goes Burr.
Alder does go Burr.
Attackers have discovered the location of a bomb.
Mkers go, what happened? Well, you basically just ran in with no information again, and you've been cut down. Information for Mkers is pretty sloppy today so far, Ollie. Looks as if they're running into things blind. I'm surprised why they're not pressuring downstairs more. I would have thought Mkers would have been coming into this game and would have thought, okay, let's just take as much map control as we can, set up these deadly crossfires, which I think is a necessity. If you want to attack Coastline well, you need to have so many different players in so many different positions. If you're trying to push in from one direction, it's never going to work, which was shown.
Attackers are heading out.
SSG aren't making it easy for them. That much is clear. Moving into round number 3 now as we sit at an equal 1 round apiece. SSG have doubled down on this upstairs control. They've this time brought a Rooney, the good old Surrey Gate, and a Goyo.
What kind of gates?
Official name, Surrey Gate.
What? No.
Pet name, Lasergate.
Lasergates! Obviously Tim and Des over on stream B.
They were having a full conversation about the pronunciation of Lasergates before they went live.
Of course they were. What else would they be talking about?
Are Mkers going to suffer an opening death yet again? 2 rounds in a row, we've seen them lose that initial engagement, and honestly, it hasn't even really been a gunfight. We've seen a missed drone, and we've seen a C4. We haven't seen an opening engagement in the classic sense of the word. Canadian this time trying to gain that early advantage again. He has a nitro cell prepped. Akwi, he's got a yellow ping on him and he's going to push all the way in quite aggressively. Draws for the SMG-11, takes down Canadian. Some good teamwork there on the side of Mkers, this time ensuring they get that pick.
There's the information that we were missing, Ollie. This is the Mkers that look scary whenever you back up great drone work behind the insane gun skill that Mkers have. Then yeah, they're going to be a force for any team to go up against. And right now, SSG, they're feeling full force again. Akwi just sweeps on through. Here comes the sledgehammer. Another one runs at him, but Finkenade a quick double kill inside of theater. Oh, but there's the crossfire. Brilliant stuff from Mkers to get that refrag, and they still have the lead.
A tense opening round there from both of these teams. Thinking they'd trying his best.
Where's he at?
What has happened there? He gets caught out by the Claymore. I'm not sure if he's gone for a little trip out of service door or maybe even main.
Oh.
Main. He's tried to get the player out on rappel. He's tried to take down Scato. Bosco, he left in a pretty tough spot. 1 versus 3. The diffuser cold on the floor. A Gemini has just gathered that information and Mkers already setting up the crossfire here. Bosco has a chance as these players are going to be fairly well spread out, but as the net tightens, it's going to be increasingly more difficult. A Toxic Babe canister will cut off access for the time being, but the diffuser has been recovered. 1 more Toxic Babe is not going to be enough to deny 35 seconds and 3 players of Mkers as the flood of Mkers bodies comes in. Lolo the one to find that last kill, but they were all committed there to taking down Bosco, not giving him an opportunity at any 1 versus 1.
Much better from Mkers that time around, Ollie. A night and day difference in terms of how they attacked it. And that's what we needed to see, was these different angles from these different players. Akwi, give credit to him again, Ollie. Big player for Mkers on day 1 of Group B and day 2, and already showing that he's going to be a big one for day 3.
Yeah, Akwi essentially won the round there for me. You know, being able to get in, take down Canadian straight away. Nice little opening pick that we've not seen Mkers get yet so far. And then just the way that he was able to move out. You know, you've got to feel sorry for Fultz. He got caught out of position, wrong side of a deployable. A tough spot to be.
I do have to question the position of Spacestation, right? They've lost their first player in Office. How have you let this man go from Office into security, into lobby, up the stairs, and kill your guy in 90? This is a kitchen defense, Ollie. That is a part of the map you need to control. Why has he just been able to glide his way through?
It is unusual to not see somebody playing inside a lobby.
And it's not even that. It's like, if you lose your guy in Office, 9 times out of 10, they're going to push down security. Because it's a very, very difficult area to hold as a defender. So attackers think, okay, that's going to be free. You need to hold that door as much as you can. Maybe a mirror could be an option. We've seen plenty of mirrors be held in towards kitchen. You put it on the triple wall in towards like the pantry area, and you cover off that lobby. We do see our mirror here, though. It won't be for the kitchen bomb site. It's going to be different now for Space Station, but I'm still happy to see that we're seeing this operator because she is extremely strong on coastline.
We're going to see a mirror played inside a kitchen. That's just going to do something to watch the push coming through from that service doorway. But it's going to be a blue bar and sunrise defense here for SSG.
Pretty standard.
Trying to make something stick as the kitchen isn't working out too well for them. They've won upstairs in hooker billiards. Nobody would like to go to penthouse, I'm sure. So they're left trying to find something here. Nothing
too elaborate from Space Station and their setup. Holding in towards kitchen, which I think is definitely something you need to do as a defender. If you give the attackers control of kitchen, it basically cuts your bomb site in two. Rotations are very, very difficult. Then we see the lobby and then in towards the courtyard. That starts to fall, and it's very, very tough for the defenders to actually fight back against it. Lolo, another Claymore kill. Fultz has died once more, Ollie, to a Claymore.
2 rounds in a row. Fultz has died to a Claymore. I dread to think where this one was. It was. We can see it. We can see the skull. It was right there at service door.
These are basic stuff. These are basic Claymore positions.
Mkers are using this Claymore. Lolo is putting that Claymore out every single round. There's only one. Fultz is doing a good job to find it.
Yeah, he's found it and he's died.
Is Fultz doing a good job to find it, or is Lolo doing a good job to predict what's going on?
Is that the game plan? Let's trade a kill for a Claymore, and then that gives us a potential to run out without a Claymore.
Good piece of utility removed there.
No, we're not giving him credit for that. No.
Well, Fultz will be left to man the cameras and do whatever else he does when you die first pick, I guess. But an unfortunate start again here for Space Station. They started the game really strong getting the opening picks, and then since then it has just descended a little bit worse for them.
A couple of C4s as well, Ollie. That's, of course, Mkers have to try and dance around. It is only fitting to do a bit of dancing inside of Coastline, a very happy map that you'd expect plenty of dancing to be done on. And Rampy, he wakes up and he finds the kill. Akwi gone now, that big player for Mkers the last round is now eliminated. But we see the self-destruction be played now from Mkers going above, opening up these angles, and it looks as if they may go just for your run-of-the-mill sunrise take, but one player that they need to try and eliminate is going to be Finkinade behind this shield. This is a very pesky position, very annoying for a lot of the attackers to deal with. Lolo finds another, C4 gets shot out, and I think Finkinade just panicking a little bit, thinking that he might have been pushed on, but no, not the case.
He's been droned in there and out as well. Barna going to start to open up that wall as the X-Caros are deployed. Thinking they're going to play aggressively onto this one. Finds a kill over onto Sasha. Has the shotgun in hand for the close range engagement. Picks up yet another. Lolo responded, but it's a 1 versus 2. Lolo has to go big here. He's got information as to where Finkinade is. He's going to be able to take him out, but the time is going to run out. SSG are going to take that round out on time.
Wow, Finkinade, the hero of that defense. That was looking grim for them, Ollie. A very difficult position for Finkinade to be in. They kept him trapped in that corner as long as they could, but as soon as he got out and he had a little bit of movement, he just thought, you know what? If I'm going to die, I'm going out swinging.
Yeah, played perfectly really from Finkinade. You know, there's not much more that you can ask from him in that situation. When you get him pushed, when the wall then gets open, it's do or die. It's time then to peek on out because there's no point retreating because you give up that ground. You've at least got to take the gunfight, and even if you lose it, you've potentially wasted another 5 seconds in what was already a very pressurizing situation for Mkers.
Top 10 moments a movie character knew he was going to die. That's what that was. He knew what was going to happen to him, but he thought, you know what, I'm going for it, and he did just that. Space Station with a timeout.
How often do we see a team take a timeout after they win a round?
I mean, it's not uncommon, but it's certainly not common.
It's certainly on the lower end of the way that we usually see these timeouts used. A round 5 timeout here for Space Station, just to regain some composure. Talk through some things that went wrong. There's obviously something they want to try and figure out here before going back to either kitchen or hooker and billiards. They've just won downstairs in Blue Bar, so they do need something now to ensure that they're able to come off this at a reasonable split.
I think so far for SSG, probably thinking that they would have had an easier time. Like, even that round, as well as thinking they did, it was still looking pretty bad for SSG. If he didn't have that moment, Ollie, inside of Sauna, things would have been much, much different. And I think Mkers would have been sat here with 3 rounds to 1 up.
Especially with losing Fultz earlier, it immediately put the pressure on, didn't it?
It did, yeah.
Put the pressure back onto SSG. You have Fultz there for the start of that round. He doesn't die to the Claymore. It's an entirely different round.
Maybe the timeout was used as a bit of an intervention for Fultz, talking about, okay, Claymores, we don't go near them.
For everyone, just to explain what a Claymore is to Fultz. Unfortunately for him, he's a bit of a magnet for him in this game.
He needs to stop with this addiction of running into Claymores, Ollie. It's hurting everyone around him.
We need to see where Lolo places the Claymore inside of this round. I mean, who needs a nomad at this point, Demo?
If Fultz dies to another Claymore, right, I'm just going to glide over. I'm not even going to comment on it. It's just going to happen. It's just like breathing air, Ollie. You don't talk about it. It just happens.
5 seconds left.
Manual breathing engaged.
Attackers are moving out to locate a bomb and
So that's me whenever I'm hyperventilating after a mega clutch and ranked.
Let's see what Mkers are able to do here. Going to be going upstairs to hooker and billiards again. Lolo, all eyes on you at the moment. We want to know where you place this utility. Probably going to be a few seconds until his spider senses start to tingle and he figures out exactly where that Claymore is going to go down. For the meantime, the pressure and the focus is going to be on just holding that main lobby while Scato gets himself onto the rappel. Mkers once again setting up these crossfires, something that's worked very well for them, Demo.
Yeah, they've been doing that well in terms of the aggressive playstyle. Akwi has kind of adapted, and I do like the fact that Mkers are trying to support him as much as they can. We move now into another top floor defense. It will be that hookah lounge and billiards for Space Station. Mkers had a really bad round the last time, just trying to force their way through in towards Aquarium, but Ollie, this time, I really like to see the adaptation. They're trying to take more than just one part of the map. In towards VIP they will go, and they've opened up that cross. Where we see that hole being opened, it is crucial for so many attacking sides, because that basically cuts off the cover for anyone trying to swing on in towards the bomb site, particularly where we can see Bosco playing right now.
Yeah, that smoke spot becomes pressured as well. Of course, the advantage with bringing the Hibana is you can sometimes open up the wall, the triple wall there that leads into the courtyard. Get that open, depending on, of course, of where the mute jammers have been placed. C4 going to get tossed on out there. It's going to deal quite a lot of damage there to Sasha, but he does get away with it with his life. The Scato just using his utility now to burn through the Banshee that's going to be on the table. Doesn't want to waste those frag grenades, though. He needs to make sure that any ADSs have been sufficiently burnt. We've got Akwi pressuring in from the hooker side as well. So all in all, this is looking much better here from Mkers.
No ADS placement, trying to cover off the smoke, and well, that does mean that the mute jammer that was on that wall last time, which was a big issue for Mkers, they couldn't open that quad wall, but now those issues that they had have been creased over. We don't need to worry about them anymore opening that wall. They have done that successfully. Canadian again, though. The Alda is at it once more. Gemini in a great position. This is the cutoff that I'm on about, Ollie. It's very, very difficult now for Space Station to actually challenge this.
Really is. Rampy's going to try and take it as a head-to-head gunfight, but Scato shuts him down. The advantage now with Mkers. They do have some time remaining, 20 seconds or so. Akwi manages to find the headshot over onto Canadian. Fulton thinking nade now left in the 2 versus 4. Scato finds another. It's all down to Fultz. He stops the plank going down with the C4, but it is not going to be enough. Gemini with the rotation cover picks up that final kill. A night and day difference there for Mkers attacking that site, Demo.
Everything has went perfect for them. That is the round that they wanted beforehand. You look at the differences. They had VIP control first. They opened up that cross. It means the SSG don't have that aggressive nature, being able to swing everything that all they're worth. We've seen there was no ADS placement. They read into that. They then used the nade to eliminate the mute jammer, which then opened up quad wall. That was the issue they had last time. They could not get rid of Bosco. Once that is open, once your smoke is gone, it is very, very difficult for any defender to try and deny that plant going down. Good attempt from below, but it just was not enough. Mkers having all the different angles. We've seen one in VIP, we've seen two coming in from Aqua, we've seen one on the hookah rappel as well, which caught out Canadian. All these different angles working in conjunction equals that round.
The teamwork that we've just seen demonstrated there from Mkers for a side of this sort of level and caliber is unmatched. You know, the way that everything was moving and working in the same direction. They just said, you know what, we don't care about ground floor. Fulch, you can have your C4 kill. You're not going to get us all, and it is not going to be the deciding factor. There was still 12 seconds left on the clock. That's a lot of time here, especially when we're seeing rounds regularly executed inside of 20 to 25 seconds. More than enough time. It's half of that amount of time there to be working with. So Mkers happy to be put under that level of pressure and just happy to be able to find all the kills. The way they've been able to adapt there, considering how badly they attacked the first time onto Hooker Billiards, it's a quick turnaround demo for me in the way that they're able to now approach that site with a totally fresh mindset and have an answer to every single one of the problems that they came up against previously.
Okay, let's move in and see how SSG fare with this kitchen hold. It was a bit of a weird one. It looked pretty scrappy on the side of Mkers whenever they went here before, and I think one thing that SSG were missing out on, like I said Ollie before, was the mirror. Now they have the mirror. These mirror windows, if we actually just take a look inside of the bomb site, you actually see exactly where they're going to be situated. Bosco, I think, is going to be behind one if we go down. Yep, this is the one that they needed. I said the issue with not having anyone inside the lobby is that office and security. It leads right directly in towards the lobby and then up the stairs onto your upstairs hold. Now with that mirror window being placed, it's going to scare away Mkers.
Already we're seeing Mkers approach this site very differently. Aqui made his entry through office previously and managed to get an opening frag onto Canadian. This time we're going for a bit more of a hatch drop. As we see Scato kind of aggressively getting himself in. I wondered for a moment if it was a Gemini clone or not, but it is actually going to be Scato himself. Canadian with a C4 prepped below. He's got a nice hold to be working with as well. Go for a little toss on up, but it is going to be baited out beautifully. Gemini getting himself out of the way there. Lolo finding the opening pick over onto Thinking Nade. Fult's forced to drop. Aqui finds a second onto Canadian, and the rotation kill there from Aqui, able to pick up both SSG players. One as they drop the hatch off that top floor. Top floor control gained at little cost.
Wow, Mkers, I don't know how they have found these kills so easily, but they've done that, Ollie, and now once again for Space Station, their backs are up against the wall. Bosco tried his best the last time to delay the round as much as he could, but it just was not enough. And, well, with a minute to go and only 2 toxic babes, you're definitely not going to be enough for this time, Ollie.
Bosco known to be an incredibly talented smoke player, but regularly left in 1vx or 2vx situations. It was Rampy and Bosco alive as the last time we saw this round. It just makes it so difficult for them to be able to have a meaningful impact when they're left up against such a great man disadvantage. There's 40 seconds left still. There was around a minute left when Mkers actually gained that top floor control and picked up the 3 kills. So it's a really long time to stave off this sort of an attack. Scato takes down Rampy. Sacha locking the round in by planting that diffuser, and Bosco left wanting. Finds one over onto Lolo, gets a second over onto Scato. It's very doable, and it would be extraordinarily impressive if he is able to pull this one off. But Mkers, they have retreated. They've got themselves outside. It's going to be very difficult for Bosco to get a line of sight here. Gemini shuts him down. The final kill coming in there as Mkers, they've looked pretty good here on the attack on Coastline.
They have indeed a 4-2 split for Mkers. SSG don't really know what happened to their top floor. I think Lolo eliminating Thinking Nade in that first pick was heavily influenced. And then from there, Aqui did the business. He walked into lobby, and there's a mirror window to cover off anyone coming into lobby. Why are SSG not playing behind the mirror window and playing in the bathroom?
SSG seemingly getting caught in a lot of gunfights that they don't need to be taking. And I don't know if that's the pressure that Mkers are able to apply and to quickly move off the back of information. It's a comment that a lot of us have made, is Mkers' ability to move quickly. It's also a characteristic that we see in teams that don't regularly play inside of Tier 1, Tier 2, is this fearfulness. They are not scared of anything. And they're happy to drone something and act on that information at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, Mkers, as we know, coming into this competition, Ollie, they're just here to play Siege. That's it. Do we think they're going to win the trophy? Were they ever pitched as that? No. Of course not. This is a team which is a very early stage of their history. This is just one chapter now that we're seeing from Mkers, and there is plenty more to come. This team, like everyone's been saying, not a professional team. Well, they are a professional team, but not inside of the professional leagues right now. And Mkers right now, they're just getting experience. That's it.
5 guys having a great time playing Siege Demo. That's all we're seeing here from Mkers, and long may it continue for them, providing us with these upsets. Not an upset yet, not a confirmed upset at least. We can call it an upset based on that first half. Coastline, yeah, sure, it's going to weigh slightly attacker-sided. You're a little bit more free and easy in terms of what you're able to bring. That's demonstrated there by SSG's lineup, opting to not bring a hard breach. Instead, Jackal and a Lion. Obviously a little bit conscious and maybe a little bit scared of whatever roam game is going to be coming out here from Mkers, as they've gone for those anti-roam operators.
Capital as well being chosen by Bosco. I was expecting to see some Capital play with Wamai being banned out by SSG. Wamai is the only hard counter to Capital ever since he was introduced. And well, with that being gone, it does make that operator much more favorable. And we've talked about you don't need the hard breach for this map. It's not a necessity. You do not need it. You can win rounds without it. Having the Capital give you even more pressure and an even more successful take as you go in for your final plant, it's going to be great. We've seen these kind of positions for this particular bomb site. You do get claustrophobic. You get trapped in corners, Ollie. If a flaming arrow hits you, you're done.
Especially combined with those Vulcan shields, one of which has just been taken out there. Lolo, that's a drone, my friend. He's able to find it. He realised as soon as he voted through, he's like, that's not a vase, that's not a little ornament there that's on the side, that's actually going to be a drone. He's been able to take it out. We wasted an E1D in the process. Bosco going to get himself onto that Tarps window, as Rampy's still looking to pressure from below. Managing to open up a little bit of line of sight there inside of the rotation. Maybe choose to hold that for a time, but Mkers have surrendered control of the bomb site. There's only going to be 2 of them playing inside of A. One behind a deployable, one behind a Vulcan. And then we have got another player inside of Aqua. But in terms of control of actual hooker, there is none at the moment.
Yeah, it looks as if it's going to be a hooker plant from SSG. There goes the fire arrows, and it has cleared away anyone from Vason. Fultz has got the entry. There's going to be one man lurking on blue, and Lolo had just seen his head, but missed the shots on it. Lolo trying his best in this position. If one player from SSG was to go to the rooftop right now, they'd be in a prime position. Another Lion Charge goes out now. Just waiting to see if they want to make a move, but no, SSG still holding very firm. Fultz finds another one now, and definitely SSG, this is their round to lose. All they need to do is secure this diffuser, and they will have it shot down. And there's the rotation that I asked for. If they have somebody on towards the rooftop, nobody from Mkers can stop the plant going in. Canadian tries his hand at a quick aqua flank as well, but Mkers are getting slaughtered as they jump in through the rotation hole, and Sasha has no chance to get in this one. The diffuser down, the windows are being covered. 20 HP to do as well. Look how quick SSG they've exited. They're not giving him these kills, and there's Bosco on that window. Wow, SSG, a minimalistic take, but it works very well because of the amount of utility they're having, Ollie.
A very, very minimalistic take. How many players did we see get inside? 2?
Yeah, I think
we saw 2 players from SSG enter the map.
I think we've seen 2 guys come in from Sunrise. We've seen like Ash below trying to, open up.
Rampy was below. Yep. He played inside of Sunrise.
Then we had them rotate up blue, and then it was just the simple person he planted, and that was it. Because then we had one guy in the door, one guy in the window, one guy in the rooftop. Unless you want to count Canadian getting into the building where he just jumped in and died.
I think at that point, if Canadian hadn't have gone onto the roof...
Maybe you should have said how many players were in the building for more than 2 seconds.
There's also a good stat line that we could try and look to work with, but just going to show there how attacker-favoured Coastline can be. You know, if there's an opportunity there to get a plant down with only 2 of your players having a significant impact inside of the building, that just goes to show that with the right level of coordination and crossfire, there are opportunities here. The question has to be asked of Mkers. 1, no control of the first floor. They didn't have any sort of control over that ground floor inside of Sunrise or inside of Blue Bar. They let Rampy come in for free. Second, surrendering Hooker entirely and not challenging in there for any significant length of time. The time was running low when the plant went down there. SSG were waiting until all of their ducks were lined up, until they were all in a row and they could hit them all with 1 shot. And that's exactly what happened as soon as Canadian rotated to the roof. At that moment, everything opened up.
SSG did a great attack, and I think it's something that Mkers were not ready for. That's an attack that you would never really see inside of Europe. That is much more of another region for Mkers. They probably fought and looked at that and said, okay, what is that? What do we do against that? Why are they not taking Aqua? Why are they not doing what we set up to be? Yeah, overall, I just think Mkers not ready for that attack whatsoever, but SSG, doing their knowledge, knowing that that's usually how Mkers set up, and they were able to put a strategy in to counter that. So, in terms of tactical work, SSG, a great first round for them.
And let's be honest, they needed it. You know, a 5-2 would have started to look a little bit shaky there, but a 4-3 starts to look a lot better here for SSG. How are they going to approach this site? This is a site that we did see SSG struggle to defend quite greatly, partly due to the fact that the top floor take from Mkers was exceptionally good. And in 4 of the 6 opening rounds for Mkers, they were able to find opening kills. That was something that they really doubled down on that opening kill, didn't they, Demo? As soon as Mkers were able to get in and find that, it was rinse and repeat. We're just using that man advantage in every gunfight from that point onwards.
So it will be that kitchen defense. Set up from Mkers is extension towards Sunrise, bit in towards the top floor as well, and Rampy in a great position actually to nearly kill Aqui, but Sasha the Smoke in a very aggressive position to cover his team. Finally, there goes Aqui. He was fighting tooth and nail to find anything he could, but all he gets is a bullet to the face. Mkers, man down, but equally so are SSG. And Ash for a Jaeger, I think an alright trade ollie, nothing of value, I'd say, from either side being really lost out. It's not as if we're losing the Capitao, who has still a myriad of utility to utilize. Scato, inside security. This is just a one-way fight. That's all it's going to be. Nothing else that can really help SSG. They have to push into that shotgun if they want security control. Or perhaps maybe just trying to jump in for a kitchen window could be an option. Completely ignore the hold in towards the lobby and try and go for a simple plant. It's going to take a lot to pull off, but definitely doable, Ollie.
It's shaping up to look very similar to the take that SSG did in the first round as well, where they just were very concise and only really pushed from one particular side, with rotating one player out at an opportune moment. Maybe that's what we see happening here and now. Canadian still outside of main, looking maybe to get himself on in, waiting for the Lion scan to be able to do something with it. Going to get himself into an engagement, but Lolo shuts him down. Fultz has found one over onto Scatter, but Lolo's going huge, picks himself up a double behind the desk. Sasha is down. Lolo and Gemini now up against Thinking Nade and Bosco. We can hear the Capital Firebolts ringing on out. A Lion scan is going to cover the push on in here for Thinking Nade. Bosco, he holds the briefcase and he is going to start planting that diffuser. Lolo has to try and push on in now. He's going to find himself down over onto Thinking Nade. Confirm that kill. Gemini with a C4. Great retake there from Mkers.
Lolo, massive stuff from him inside of lobby behind the reception. He wasn't checking in, SSG, he was checking them out.
Winning your gunfights. Lolo has won that round off winning gunfights. He won 2 crucial gunfights, and he was under an inordinate amount of pressure, Demo. The Lion scan came in. He's got Canadian outside of main. Sure, the late push was there from Fultz. I think had Fultz been there 1-2 seconds earlier, that kill then goes down as a trade. Yep. The round starts to look very differently indeed.
I think Fultz challenged with a shotgun as well, with a sidearm. Ooh. So I don't know if that maybe played a big part into it. I'm not sure, but I still think Lolo would have had that nonetheless. So yeah, like you said, 1 second earlier for Fultz. Lobby control in favor of SSG. You lose Lolo, you have the man advantage. It would be a much more successful plant. And also keep in mind, amidst of that, there was a down for Mkers, and they still had the time to go in and get the revive.
All enough to put Mkers 5-3 now. As they continue their defensive phase here on Coastline. How's that drone survived? Excuse me? Maybe Akwi's looking to grab it for later.
Yep. One thing as well I'm going to mention, Ollie, is SSG as a team are all equally as good as each other. Yeah, a world-dominant team, as we've seen them do at the end of the day, still the reigning world champions. But nobody has really had an amazing game. Everyone has been all-around good, but there has been that one guy who we've looked at and thought, damn, he's amazing. You look at Mkers, we have 2 of them.
Yep, Lolo and Akwi really stepping it up. It was a conversation we had at the start of this entire group stage, wasn't it, Demo? We were saying, you know, who is the one to watch on side of Mkers? And I think me and you both are different people. I think I said Lolo.
I think I said all of them, to be honest.
Yeah, you said all of them. I said Lolo. Someone said Akwi. And we've had a big day out of Gemini, we've had a big day out of Lolo and Akwi, all of them really stepping up. Even Sasha, I remember he had a bit of a pop-off earlier on in the week as well. So there really is no limit, and there's no single person who's going to carry the brunt of the blow. Akwi shuts down Rampy there, the fadeaway, dropping himself down the hatch. A beautiful opener, and yet another opening kill here for Mkers.
Wow. SSG struggling to get any refrag as well from that. I'm very surprised. You've just lost your entry, and nobody wants to really make up for his death. SSG now actually going pretty aggressive. False was thinking about a quick run down the corridor, but instead decides to back up, and they're on the hunt for Akwi. See him, he scanned out the Mozzie, getting those Jackal pings. Very annoying for any defender to go up against whenever you're constantly being pinged out, and you always know that an attacker could be looming, waiting for the information to be supplied, and then you're dead. But Space Station now rotating their forces towards the Sonador, and Sunrise Seg may be where they're headed, but they have very little map control, Ollie. They have a few people upstairs still, but they need to try and get in towards Sunrise and start pressuring that hatch.
Losing Rampy as well, it just puts a lot more value into those Banshees from Malusi. They're going to be a lot more difficult to get rid of. You're going to have to commit your nades now to getting rid of those, and that's something you really want to be using to, you know, root out players and maybe even grab kills. You don't necessarily want to be using those to take down just the Banshees, but when needs must, that is exactly what's going to happen. Lolo looking maybe to push it aggressively here, going to go for a C4 toss on out, doesn't deal any damage, or at least nothing too significant. Hibana now going to be able to open up that sauna door, or sauna wall, sorry. Lolo feeling the pinch here.
Yeah, Lolo now backed up in a corner where he doesn't want to be, and he's actually going to challenge, and he finds it. Canadian looked away at the wrong time, and Lolo punishes him for it. Mkers, the little team that could, is doing it against the world champions, and another one just drops. You've gifted Lolo another kill. Space Station crumbling at the seams. Bosco, a 1 versus 5, another 1 versus 5 that he goes into, Ollie. The man's a legend, but he can't do it all.
Is that 3 1 versus 5s he's been in now? Poor old Bosco, man, always finding himself out there in the cold in the dying few stages. It's going to be a C4 that is his undoing at the end of that round. Mkers, match point.
Wow. Wow. Mkers just running around really, Ollie, just winning their gunfights, winning their engagements, and this is the issue I had with the map. In terms of gun skill right now, Mkers are all over SSG. Do you know why, Ollie? Because this is a map that you need very little strats on. You don't need that much brain power, you just run around and kill. And what are Mkers good at, Ollie? Running around and killing.
It's another round where Lolo has won it with 2 kills. And he's kind of, I think he's taken down the same people there. He took down Canadian and he took down Fultz. Fultz dropping directly in front of that window. That is a question. Like, how has that happened? I'm not sure if you thought there was a Claymore at the bottom of it, and maybe we were just trying to gather that Claymore as
yes,
well.
A Claymore on attack, yes.
Oh dear, Fultz. That was a little bit of a blunder there. Canadian losing the gunfight, sure, things like that do happen. It was diffuser down as well. Lolo knew that. He knew that at that point the round was pretty much in the bag because it was unlikely he was then going to get pressured through sauna. He had a teammate able to watch that angle for him. SSG are left wanting here on Coastline. only managing to pick up 3 rounds. It's been a tough old start to the day for them. Mkers looking to finish strong here with a hooker and billiards defense.
Potential final round for Mkers. If they win this defense, that will be it. 7-3 victory for Mkers against the current world champions. SSG now need to pull off 3 great rounds on their attacks if they want to keep themselves in and push it to that overtime. See how they continue on as now they move in. How will they approach it? Looks to be that top area that they'll pressure in towards. Moving in towards Theater and in towards Penthouse. Having that upstairs pressure that you need. Right now, SSG just taking it slow all in. Is slow the right course for them? Is it?
I mean, slow has been the order of the day, really, for SSG. I think the most important thing here is that they don't lose that opening kill. It's something that they've consistently been down on. They've only had the opening pick in 3 of these rounds so far, and it wasn't the 3 that they won.
I'm a little bit surprised, Ollie, that they're actually changing their attack strategy, because last time all they did was take hooker, and that was it. They had a little bit of sunrise. Once again, Mkers not setting up for that take. They're going for just their standard defense. This is what they would do naturally under any circumstances. And Gemini, he doesn't need a mirror window to get kills.
He fearlessly stood in front of that mirror window as soon as it got popped by the Hibana pellets, and then is able to get the frag onto Canadian, defuse it down. Not too much of a problem for SSG, as they're going to be able to recover that quite easily. But Gemini still being a pest here inside of Theatre. Maybe even able to deal some chip damage. Does, in fact, put some damage in over onto Fultz. And he's also gathering a wealth of information. They know that that's exactly where Space Station are pushing on him. Eventually, Rampy steps up and says, I'm going to find a kill in this round. I'm going to take down Gemini.
Yeah, Rampy needs to ramp up something big for SSG. 4 versus 4, and Akwi, has he been spotted out? He's actually going to run away, and is he successful in his escape? Yes, he is! Wow, Akwi somehow makes it out alive. SSG lets that kill slip through their fingers. And now it is going to be Mkers salvaging something. At least one player still survives from that madness that happened inside of Theater. Now it is a 4 versus 4. Standard Aqua take is now going to be the route for Space Station. You can see Mkers all like, this is what they want. This is where they want SSG to push into, because they have Sasha with a shotgun saying, hello.
Shotgun and 3 Toxic Babe canisters to boot. He's got information. He has a yellow ping that there is going to be a player inside of there. We can see SSG desperately trying to make rotations now, as they're going to look to pressure from Aquarium Door as well. The Toxic Babes are going to come in here, as Sasha's going to use 1 to at least deny one of the angles that he has to worry about. He's going to get fire arrowed out, has to go for a relocate. Rampy takes him down there on the rotation. Good stuff from SSG, but is it too little too late? As the smoke dissipates, Rampy is able to push on through. It looks as though he may be going to lead the charge here. Lolo getting himself into an engage, finds one on Thinking Aid. All the kills are coming up here for Mkers. Fultz, you can't plant the diffuser, mate. You're in a 1vx. Scato finds the last kill. German, they've done it. Mkers have won. They have beat Space Station Gaming. Current champions here inside of the Six Invitational have just fallen to that little old team from Italy. 7-3 demo.
Wow. Mkers, this team which is just hitting everything that they can on their checklist. Oh yeah, we'll beat NA. Maybe we'll see if they can beat EU if they move in towards the playoffs. APAC and LATAM, don't worry about that. We don't need that checklist. But right now, Ollie, NA are just being succumbed to this team out of Italy.
It's a tough start there for Space Station. We're going to be back in a few minutes with our experts, Jess and Dev, to break this one down. Don't go anywhere.
What does it take to create a secure community? Join us on the second episode of I Call Next, as we discover how to protect what's most important and enable worry-free play.
The Italian underdogs have done it. They took down the reigning world champions, and in what a fashion, Jess. From the get-go, that was a Mkers game.
I honestly just felt incredible watching that match. I mean, I'm a huge Italian fan myself, so I've been going for Mkers since the very beginning. But for me to sit there, watch some of their roam clears, watch some of their plant denials, I mean, honestly, this team is incredible for a tier 3 team. I know we keep saying it, but it is undeniable that this team should make Challenger League, should make tier 1 even, considering the absolute tossing around they're doing of all of these teams.
I feel like it's inevitable that Mkers are going places. What we do know is that they are going to the playoffs. They have locked themselves in their group, which is incredibly exciting for this team. Like you're saying, they've never played a major, never played an SI, never played Challenger League, never even played Tier 1 either. So this is a massive moment in their careers after trying for such a long time, and they've done it in such an impressive fashion here against the reigning world champs. Very, very well played by Mkers. Any specific things that stood out to you that they were doing?
Look, Lolo, it's always nice, and I know that there's better words to use for this, but it's always nice to have a team that has players who are undertaking their roles. Now, what I mean when I say that is you look over to Mkers and you have Lolo, who's their entry fragger. He's also their main fragger. He plays things like the Malusi, also plays Ash on attack. He was doing the role of an entry. Aki was doing a role of a flex frag quite consistently. You saw the kill there with the Mozzie. What I liked is that they knew how to play their role. They knew what their purpose was in each of those rounds, especially on defense, and they played it really well. Even more on attack was every time SSG, second round, think about how they set up to counter Mkers, they completely changed their strategy around brought Go-Go shields, bought the Aruni for the Surya gates, did everything they could to counter what they thought the push would be, and then they just countered them again. That's a double counter. That is something that is you don't get to see that too often, James, and honestly to me, that was just incredibly exciting.
Yeah, as you were saying, very good attacks from Mkers, and of course they made a strong run on their defense as well, 3 in a row. I really like some of the stuff we saw from SSG in terms of their executes. Gave me some phase vibes from the other day.
Yeah.
Love those cheeky little Capitao executes. The guys in the cars mentioned that the Wamai was banned, so that lines up. But you know what didn't line up? The game for Space Station. Canadian had a bit of a shocker on the scoreboard, of course. The scoreboard isn't where we really look to Canadian for an impact.
No.
SSG have been missing their IGL. They've been missing that leadership, and that has really affected them in stage 1 so far. And unfortunately, bringing back Canadian hasn't just been the magical elixir that they were looking for. So to touch on them for a moment, they haven't quite gotten to where they want to be so far, but they still have a really good shot, and this is not the end of their journey at the Six Invitational. But for Mkers, this feels like it's just the start of their journey.
Yeah, some impressive things on the board and some questions to be asked for SSG. I liked what I saw from SSG. I'm just a little bit upset that it never got to fruition. You know, it never, you know, you got to the last bits of the round, you end of your round, you went, I could see what the intention was, but it never met the outcome they were expecting. And that's always the worst because you know the early and mid round are looking hot and then it fizzles out really, really quickly, which is a shame. But I think you have some good news for the SSG fans out there at the very least.
Well, according to my calculations, SSG cannot be knocked out of groups. But let's talk about the group as a whole, because there's something pretty exciting for Mkers at the top of their group. They have knocked down Parabellum, and Mkers are at the top with 3 wins and 2 losses. What you will notice is there are 5 teams in that group that currently are tied in that exact same scoreline, where we have this crazy tiebreaker scenario. It gets a bit complicated. We have to have the admins who specialize in this area go through it. According to my calculations, Giants and Oxygen are the only teams that can be eliminated from their group. Giants on the B stream, spoiler alert, did lose to MIBR just now. And even though Space Station has only 2 wins, it's either Space Station or Oxygen that win their game later today, and either Giants or Oxygen that win their game later today. So according to my calculations, only Giants or Oxygen could be eliminated. And of course, Oxygen have 3 more games, whereas Giants only have the 1. So it's looking pretty grim for the Singaporeans. There is still some hope for NA, but I know that EU on top, a lot of people are quite happy about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a little bit of a dance around the top of this group. I rightfully pointed out when we got to Group A, we were speaking about it on the pre-desk. I was like, yeah, EU solidly on top, BDS Empire rightfully where they belong. You know, we're always throwing around this EU-NA rivalry. But now, Parabellum, TSM, they've been shuffled down a little bit. And like I said, rightfully you have EU on top where all things rest as they should be.
Well, when a team in Tier 3 of Europe can defeat Space Station reigning world champs, TSM number 3 from last year's world champs, and Parabellum, the winner of the NA Open qualifier, we do have some questions for NA. They are going to have to fight back. We have Oxygen, NAL Stage 1 champions, up for the task. Let's see if they can get some revenge for North America.